ahead and call us to order and declare that we have a quorum of 7 members present. Moves us to item C1, consideration and discussion related to boundary adjustment recommendations. And before I hand it over to Dr. Ely, I think it might be a good idea to kind of describe a little bit about where we are in the process and how we got here, and make sure we're all calibrated and on the same page.
Oh, he's on.
I'm on. Okay, is that better? Okay. Okay, so where are we? We have a new process in place that we are trying out. And as part of that process, we had the administration come to the board about a few things last fall that related to school capacity issues, demographic composition, and other matters related to the student makeup at our schools and dealing, as we'll find tonight, with facility utilization. As a result of that, it was determined that we, well, in some, have an overcrowding issue at College Station High School and underutilized capacity at A&M Consolidated. So the board made the decision to address that by looking at moving students or adjusting boundaries. And that gets us to where we are tonight, which is the start of that process. Now, at least how I envision tonight is the beginning, where we will start to look at the issues. There will be, I'm guessing, a couple at least of options presented to us. And as part of that, we will begin the work of identifying the issues. We've all been involved in this before, either as board members or committee members. And the way these things tend to shake out is when you push in one place, the bubble pops up somewhere else. I'm searching for the best analogy. The best one we could come up with was a waterbed. But there are other things like a balloon. When you push down, it pops up somewhere else. And what tonight is the start of that process so that we can begin to get a feel for what the issues are and what they will be. What it is not, I don't believe, is the time to make a decision. At least for me, I don't know what the issues are. So keep that in mind as we're going through that. And going through this process, be looking for information that you need and that you think would benefit the team as we are trying to make this decision. And I think that, particularly tonight, is the goal of where we are. Anybody else want to weigh in on that, where we are, before we turn it over to Dr. Ely to get started? Okay, Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I will remind you, as we already have been, to speak into the microphone, and another good tip to turn them on. So make sure that we can be heard very well by our audience. And then, of course, as we all know, this is being recorded, so we want the folks who go back and watch this to be able to hear us clearly as we talk through this. So tonight, I'll be talking very little. This will be Mr. Martindale's opportunity to take us, the board and the community, through the process that we use to develop these options. I will let you know that you'll be seeing 4 options tonight. And I would like to reiterate what Mr. Harris says. This is the beginning of the discussion, not the end of the discussion. These aren't 4 perfect options. These are 4 starting places and 3 different concepts, which you'll see here in just a few minutes, that we started in our discussions as we have prepared for this meeting. What my goal is, or what my hope is for us tonight, is that you can see what our thinking was, the evolution of that, and some of the key issues that will be highlighted as we move forward through this process. I'm glad that we have a number of meetings already scheduled for this, and so I just look forward to you hearing kind of just our initial thinking as we bring this to you this evening. So with that, I'd like to invite Mr. Martindale, Deputy Superintendent and Chief Financial Officer, to do tonight's presentation. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Dr. Ely. Start the presentation with a little historical or background information. Mr. Harris kind of stole my beginning part of my presentation, but that's quite all right. Just a little history as to what got us to this point this evening in reviewing and considering 4 other options as far as our high school boundaries. Going to go back to December, and if you recall at our December workshop, Templeton Demographics came in and gave us our annual enrollment projection update. And as a part of that, my responsibility was to take the components of FC Local, and apply to the most recent projections the demographer provided us. The big components of FC Local were, as Mr. Harris mentioned, facility utilization, and as I have it stated here, administration shall specifically inform the board about any school that has enrollment below 85% or above 110% of building capacity. It's one of the big pieces of FC Local. So we took that Templeton projection enrollment data and I applied the facility utilization parameters from FC Local to that, and also the comparable composition. We would take a look at that at each of the different levels of the campuses. In this particular situation, I'm citing the high school, where we were looking for comparable composition of less than 12 percentage points. So that was a part of our December enrollment review. When we went through this in December, Templeton provided us with a couple of different sets of numbers because, as you're all aware, we have a charter school opening this fall, and they presented us an option of a high impact, which showed us losing collectively students in the district, a low charter impact, which is what we utilized for all of our projection numbers, and then a no charter impact, what we would anticipate growing without a charter school. So all of our projections were built off the middle of the road, so to speak. The low charter projection, or 0.3%, which basically is no growth for us. This slide should look familiar to you. This is directly from that report that I gave in December. So we'll walk through this real slow just to refresh your memory of our high schools. The number in the parentheses were the capacity numbers. We applied the math as an FC Local to determine the 85% and the 110% capacity for each of our comprehensive high schools. So you could see that here in the chart. And then we took Templeton's projected enrollments with our current boundaries and projected and used those numbers in the out years. The green signified where we were under the 85% capacity mark articulated in FC Local. The yellow shows where we exceeded the 110% number. So as you can see, Consol tracked below the 85% capacity mark until 21-22. And at College Station High School, you can see the capacity numbers as per FC Local and see that they reached that 110% mark in 1920. The circle is where we would, under current circumstances, be anticipating proposing a bond for the addition of Phase 2 of College Station High School, which would provide us an additional 600 seats there. The star signifies when we would have access to that add-on. So it'd take 3 years, basically. The bottom part is the comparable composition. This is from fall PEEM submission we submit October 2017, Consolidated had 34.56% of the students free and reduced lunch in College Station High School at 20.23 for a variance or a difference of 14.33. If you remember, I did some additional math. The GF that stands for if I took in consideration the students that grandfathered and the impact it had on those particular percentages. FC Local uses a threshold of 12%. So it was this data that drove us kind of to where we came to the realization we need to revisit how we currently have our boundaries for our high school. FC Local also does an excellent job of guiding us through this process. So I want to kind of read through this quickly for the board just as a refresher as well. For the process of addressing the boundaries at the high school, it says administration should develop new attendance boundaries, including maps. Again, we'll share all of this information with you here shortly. 5-year enrollment projections, capacity, student composition numbers for the board's initial consideration. Again, that's the beginning of that process tonight. The second bullet, these options should be presented to the board along with information explaining how they were developed. So we'll walk through the rationale, the thought process of the cabinet as we came up with the 4 different options. And also of these options that are presented to the board, the administration should also include any preference or ranking of the options as appropriate. FC Local also goes on to say that after receiving the options, the board should analyze and consider the options. Once the analysis has been completed, the board should adopt the final attendance boundaries. As a part of that analysis and consideration, the board should receive input from the public through at least one community forum. That's why I have April the 2nd highlighted down here. The board should also gather feedback from the public through email and other means as determined appropriate. And at the end of the presentation, again, I'll highlight the public forum we have scheduled for next week, as well as the other meetings from the workshop standpoint as we work through this process, as well as the email address community members can submit feedback to. That will be at the end of our presentation this evening. So FC Local kind of set the parameters for us to review our circumstances and also kind of outlines the process for us to do this in. Okay, so the process. As we began, Cabinet realized our objectives are these. Obviously, through looking at FC Local, we need to improve our comparability between our high schools. Our free and reduced lunch percentage points. We're at over 14 now. That needs to be less than 12 as defined by FC Local. And we need to improve our facility utilization to reduce our capacity issues at College Station High School and increase the use of the capacity we have available at Consol. We knew those are the things we need to focus on to address what's outlined in the charge before us. So as Cabinet began the process, some of the research, we began by reviewing the demographics of the district by looking at the maps provided to us through our demographer and their software, looking at maps with numbers of students within all the planning areas in the district. The district's broken up to over 350 plus planning areas, as well as maps with concentrated areas of low SES students. As we kind of looked at this data, we came to a realization there are a handful of concentrated areas of low SES students, most of which of those are located in the northern part of our district. Also notice that the middle of the district, which we'll call the middle, located directly adjacent to College Station High School. I'm using approximations, Graham, Eagle, south to Barron. That area is primarily built out and densely populated. And a majority of those students are non-low SES students. The southern end of our district, which is where our primary growth areas are, have very few pockets of low SES students. So this is basically what our district looks like from uh, a very high and broad perspective. So how do we accomplish our objectives? Well, we took a look at, do you move low SES students from CONSOL to CSHS to address your comparability issues? Well, yes, but that doesn't solve your problem because CSHS is already at capacity, and just adding students continues to increase that problem. Then we considered move non-low SES students from CSHS to CONSOL. If we looked at those numbers and applied this particular idea, it took us moving so many non-low SES students from College Station High School's zone that to have any impact on the comparability number, we were in fact beginning to create capacity issues at CONSOL. Okay, is everyone with me so far? Okay. So we came to the realization that we cannot achieve our objective of comparability and facility utilization with a standalone approach of either of these, but we needed a combination thereof to accomplish our goal. We needed to move both low SES students from CONSOL to CSHS in combination with moving some non-low SES students from CSHS to CONSOL. We'll go slow because there's lots of CSHS, CONSOL, low SES, not. And Dr. Ely stole part of my presentation here as well. We have 4 options that we'll share with the board and the public this evening. Any questions before I move on to the next? Okay, how did Cabinet start? Well, we started with the current attendance boundaries. And our initial goal was preserving the walking and biking zones around College Station High School. Those areas there have a multitude of students that walk and ride bikes. It's a very densely populated area. So that was our first look at this right out of the gate with option 1. Okay, it's preserving the area, the walking distance to CSHS. Option 1, and I'm going to go slow through this because there's lots of different lines and arrows and everything else. And these maps, the entire presentation, along with some additional maps with some street names and those things, will be made available on our website this evening so people can really drill down and look at these a little bit better. We use these for presentation purposes. Okay, on our zoning maps, the dark blue lines signify our current boundaries. Obviously, the blue is zoning for consolidated and the green for College Station High School. Just so you can kind of get your bearings. For example, this is Pebble Creek Elementary. Here's 6. Forest Ridge, College Station High School. Out here, obviously, Welborn Pecan Trail, Greens Prairie. There's a northern part of the district, College Hills, Oakwood, AMCMS. There's CONSOL, 2818 running right in front of it. So it just kind of gives you your bearings a little bit. This is Creekview and Cypress Grove, Graham Road. So everyone just kind of gets a feel for where they are on the map. Okay, in this particular option, again, we realized we had to make those 2 movements as far as low SES and non-low SES students combination to achieve some of the results we were looking for as defined by FC Local. I'm sorry, before I move again, the principle on this was to leave or maintain the integrity of walkers, walkability, and bike riders in this highly dense area around College Station High School in this area. So that's why there's not a change there, and that's the guiding principle on this first particular option. Up north, in this particular option, we've moved the existing boundary of 6 west over along Anderson Street from George Bush north down to 2818. By expanding this allows us to move a more concentrated area of low SES students to College Station High School zone. Okay. Combined with that, we need to look at moving non-low SES students to consolidated zone. So on the southeastern edge here, our existing is 6. This moved that zone to the west to Arrington Road all the way to the end of the district, and it includes Indian Lakes. It also moved the boundary on this western side. It moved it south and east. ING, South Dowling, down to Welborn Road. Okay, so we moved from here to Arrington, from here south and east, basically to South Dowling and Welborn Road. I'm going to show you the data associated with those in just a moment. Any questions before I move to the next slide? And we can obviously come back after I show you the data. So when we run the data on those particular zones, the first report, this grade report, is our free and reduced lunch percentages, okay? What it does is take our existing high school kiddos right now, 9 through 12, and drops them in the new zone that you just looked at, the option 1. So it takes current kids and says, okay, this is what it would look like if we had that zone right now. Because we know which of those kids receive free and reduced lunch services. That's the physical count of these kids here, and it generates our free and reduced lunch percentage. This is with current 9th through 12th graders. You can't project free and reduced lunch. It's with current 9th through 12th graders, free and reduced lunch using the option 1 that you just saw. Is everyone with me on this? These are the percentages it would create for us, a 4% difference. You'll see a report like this after each of our options, okay? So the format will stay consistent for you. The bottom is the projection of the enrollment numbers, okay? Again, these would be effective in fall of 2019, okay? So that's where we started projecting or sharing the enrollment numbers. So if we utilize this particular option in fall of 2019, it projected to have 1943 at College Station High School, 2002 at Consol. It projects out. Let me speak to the yellow to the shading so you kind of understand that. This is kind of generated in the software that we have. And it's in my examples from December, I used yellow when we got to 110% of capacity. The software here just uses the straight 100% capacity. So that's why you see, for example, College Station 1950, why it goes to yellow at 1980, because it's over the 1950. So please understand the software projects after it exceeds the actual capacity number. It doesn't wait to 110%. If I were doing this in mine, it wouldn't show up till 2246. So there's a difference there. It's consistent with all the options you see, but different than how I did it in December. Okay. You can look at your numbers in your out years for each of the high schools. This particular is where we would, using this particular scenario, project a possible bond for College Station High School for the addition of those wings and additional 600 seats. That'd be fall of 21. That's why it's circled here. 3 years to have it on the ground and using it. So the same symbols as I used previously. So we would be able to make use of that space fall of 24. and project considering a bond for high school 3 fall of 25. Of course, we will begin using that facility to beyond what we've projected here. So these are the numbers associated with option 1.
So you might not have this sitting in front of you. So you might or might not have this sitting right in front of you, but how many students does that have moving from College Station, were zoned College Station High School to Consol as a total switch number?
I'd have to apply some math to that. I have how many are in those particular areas, but I just have to do a little add subtraction.
like-
I can generate it.
Ballpark 200, 300, 350?
Look at that. Yeah. He'll do the math.
I
on
mean,
it.
I
It should-
don't
it's
necessarily,
right
but
there.
I think in the long run, we're going to want for each one of those
How
options.
much is-
We're going to want to know fundamentally how many students are moving.
Excellent.
Both ways, right.
Dr. Lee does a little math on that, and he'll have those numbers for you. Well, I think he can get a lot of that based on some of the numbers I have there. So continue with option 1. Yes? Okay. Just observations for this particular one. Brings our comparability to 4%. Obviously, that's on the worksheet, previous worksheet. It does add growth areas from the southern part of the district to Consol. That it occurs when we move our boundaries at the southern end over to Arrington Road and Welborn Road from where they exist currently. It adds multifamily dwellings from the northern part of the district to CSHS. That's the movement, Anderson Road, George Bush, that area. And it preserves walkability neighborhoods around CSHS, where you didn't see any movement in that neighborhood, that zone, right around the middle of the district. It doesn't change the middle school zones, but it does change the percentage of the projected splits. So I've tried to list this here for you. I'll have an observations page for every option we go through as well. So we'll repeat this for every option, so you'll get this information on each one.
You're going to give us printouts of these?
Yes, sir. I'll
Okay,
give you.
thank you.
I would have Mr. Harris, but Dr. Ely wasn't going to let me. So no. So
He knows we would look ahead.
exactly, that's what he said. So AMCMS, 77% of those students would be zoned to attend Consol, 23% to CSHS using this particular option. Currently, we're approximately at an 80-20 split on that, so a variance of about 3 percentage points. CSLMS, 41% zoned to Consol, 59% to CSHS. Currently, we have a 50-50 split. Welborn Middle School would be 44% to Consol, 56% to College Station High School. Currently, that's a 20% to Consol and 80% to College Station High School. So that's kind of a summation of things from option 1 of 4.
Okay, Dr. Wesson, in answer to your question, well, let me begin by saying this. In those areas that we identified moving, we have some total numbers. What we looked at was the numbers of kids attending from those planning areas, attending school that are current 7th through 10th graders now. So they would be 9th through 12th graders in 2019 when these zones took effect. Okay, so those are the numbers that we're giving you right now. So it's a little bit different numbers than what Mr. Martindale is taking you through. So in the northern part of the district, in between Business 6, or between Texas and Anderson Street, thank you, Mike, between north from George Bush all the way down to 2818, there's about 123 students in that square right there. So in this scenario, 123 students would have been moved to College Station High School. going down south in that triangle between Highway 6 and Arrington Road and Peach Creek, the actual creek right down there. That number of current 7th through 10th graders who would be 9th through 12th upon implementation is 126. Okay. In the part that is west of Welborn Road and a little bit of South Dowling and INGN, that blue area right there, that is a total number of 233. So, in answer to your direct question, Dr. Weston, it would be 123 kids in option 1 going from College Station from Consol to College Station High School, and 359 going from College Station High School to Consol. Now, some of these others are going to have. Let me give you another big swath because we're getting ready to talk about them. Mike, if you would just kind of walk through with your cursor there from Graham Road to Eagle Avenue. Right there between State Highway 6 and State Highway 40, that rectangle right there contains, that's Edelweiss, Dove Crossing, and a part of Springbrook. Thank you. That's 181 students in that rectangle right there. And as you'll see, some of the various options have kind of bits and parts of that, so it won't necessarily always add up to these exact numbers, but that gives you a rough order of magnitude.
Okay, option 1 of 4. And we'll kind of follow this format through the next 3 options, where it provides you the map, the data associated with that option, and then just some general observations. Okay. So where did we go from the first option? Well, in Cabinet, we asked ourselves, could we develop an option which met the criteria, our objectives, without having such large geographic areas in the southern end of the district zoned Consol? So under this particular thought process, we have this, you can see this is 2A, but we have 2B as well. Just came up with 2 different options with this concept in mind. Can we accomplish this without such large geographic movements in the south end? So I'll address these one at a time, but it's the same philosophy for both in particular options. So for 2A, I'll start up north again. This stays consistent from option 1, again, moving a concentrated area of low SES students to College Station High School zone. Okay, so this is the same as previous option. I'm going to work my way down south. The boundary on the western end remains consistent. This particular option does look at moving Highway 6 and moving that boundary west again to Arrington Road to include Indian Lakes. What you will see on this one, though, if you remember in option 1, our driving principle was to maintain the walkability around College Station High School. This begins to look at considering some of those densely populated neighborhoods north of College Station High School for possible movement. So what you're looking at here is what would move the existing boundary from Graham and move it south to Eagle Avenue. Again, for your bearings, that's Creekview and Cypress Grove. It'd move it south to Eagle Avenue between Highway 6 and William Fitch. So we made an adjustment in the middle as opposed to just all movement on the southern end. Again, for your bearings, there's College Station High School, Creekview, Cypress Grove. Good. Let me mention this. The yellows, don't get caught up with those. Those are properties we own, but there are no schools on those sites. Okay. All right. Option 2A generates this data for us. Again, this is what enrollment would be if we used current 9th through 12th graders with the boundaries we just shared with you. Would generate these free and reduced percentages for us, 30.7 and 26.7. Again, a difference in comparability of 4%. Look at our enrollment forecast report. Again, beginning in 2019, where the boundaries would be implemented. Consol would be 2001 students, and College Station High School 1944. And you can follow those out. Again, the highlighting starts when the enrollment exceeds their 100% capacity mark, not the 110%. This would put us on track with our bonds. It mirrors exactly where we would fall with option 1, where we'd be looking at a bond for a classroom addition to College Station High School in the fall of 21. Have access to those facilities in the fall of 24, with both high schools around the 2,500 mark. Consol would be tracking a little bit larger, but start considering the possibility of a bond for high school 3 in fall of 25. So you can see how the enrollment of both the schools project out.
With the adding on of College Station High School, what does that bring the capacity, the new capacity to?
The 110% number is, I believe, if we use 1950, we add 600, so it'd be 2550. And then, of course, you want to consider 110%, 10% beyond that.
So again, Mr. Schaefer, that's subject to decisions that another group, this board, community group would make as to how big of an addition we could make. So our thinking when we did phase 1 for College Station High School was that we would come back with classroom space for an additional 600 students, a third gym, a black box theater. So that's the planning number we're using now, because that's what we've talked about with the community. We could always decide to add space for more students or fewer students. That's our thinking now.
On that thinking, what was the estimated cost for that you're just throwing in there as a earmark for?
Oh, in current dollars, we're thinking 35 to 40 million. Current dollars.
Okay, does everyone go with this? We'll move with additional data for 2A. Our observations, again, 4%. It does add a growth area from the southern part of the district Consol. That's the movement of the boundary in the southern end from 6th to Arrington Road. It adds a densely populated area from the middle of the district to Consol. That's that movement from Graham Road south to Eagle. Adds multifamily dwellings from the northern part of the district to CSHS. That continues to be the movement around the Anderson Street area. It does, from option 1, reduce the current walkability in the neighborhoods around College Station High School. Again, that's because of the considering the movement in the middle to consolidated as opposed to where it's currently zoned at CSHS. Does that make sense, group? Okay. Doesn't change middle school zones, but does change our splits. And again, you can read through AMCMS, 77% Consol, 23% College Station High School. And again, you're familiar with our current approximated splits as is. It would, at CSMS, have projected 55% going to Consol and 45% to College Station High School, and Wilbur Middle School would be 27% to Consol and 73% to College Station High School. It just gives you a comparison point. Questions before 2B? Same thought process. How can we accomplish our goal without moving such a large geographical area in the south? This generated option 2B. So I'm ahead of myself. We shifted the southern growth area from the eastern portion, from that 6 over to Arrington, the district, to the western portion, which produce this map. Okay. Again, the movement in the northern part of the district remains consistent. This is where we're capturing an increased number of low SES students to College Station High School. We left our boundary on the eastern side as 6, but instead moved our existing boundary south and east. ING, Straub, Welborn Road. You can see how it tracks right here, become part of Consol. We did some movement in the middle. It's not exactly the same as the previous one because there's different numbers of kids in these areas that we're moving when we look at these growth areas in the south. So it impacts what you're looking for in this particular area as well. So that's why it's not just a mirror. So what this one would do would move the boundary from Graham Road south. Again, here's Creekview and Cypress Grove, and move it south to include Dove Crossing. It would capture Bridal Gate in the Springbrook neighborhood here. This is Barron Road right here.
Okay, so
No.
if I'm correct, so basically instead of taking 181 out of that larger, flatter rectangle, you're taking a fewer number of students by cutting it this way because the southwest portion has more people than the eastern portion. So it's the
Correct.
same number of students, you're just doing it in a slightly different way. Okay, thank you.
The density here is different than, so yes, Dr. Wesson. Questions? And again, I'll show you the data associated with this particular map. Okay. Again, if we took current 9 through 12 and dropped them in these zones now, this is what those enrollments would look like. Number of free and reduced lunch kiddos at each campus and the percentage, the relative percentages, with a delta of 5.3%. Okay, we'll look at our enrollment projections. When we opened in 2019, 1990 at Consol, 1955 at College Station High School. You can see how our numbers project out for each school. Again, the same symbols as to when we would anticipate a bond for the addition of classroom space to College Station High School, again falling in fall 21. Ready for use fall of 24 when College Station High School was projected to have 2,500. And again, we'd be looking at the fall of 25 or bond for high school of 3. Any questions before? Again, our observations, comparability, as you just saw, 5.3%. Does add a growth area from the southern part of the district. That's the movement down to basically Welborn Road. Densely populated area from the middle part of the district. That is Dove Crossing, the neighborhoods we mentioned previously. Adds multifamily dwellings from the northern part of the district. Anderson. And again, reduces the current walkability in our neighborhoods because we're moving from the middle. Oh, we're going to have the video, the presentation, additional maps, everything live on our website this evening made for the public to see. Got it, Mr. Glenn Wickle? Yes? All right. Does not change middle school zones, but again, we'll take a look at the splits it generates, 77 to 23, as opposed to the current 80-20, 50-50 at CSMS, which reflects what we have now. Wilburn Middle School, 32% Consol, 68 College Station High School. Option 2B. So we've had option 1, maintaining the walkability around College Station High School, moving geographic areas from the south. 2A and 2B reduces that walkability, makes some movement from the middle of the district and less movement geographically on the southern end. And with this so far? All right. So where do we go from here? Is there a way Cabinet asked itself to accomplish our objectives by not moving any of the existing southernmost growth areas? We accomplish our numbers with that in mind, which generated option 3. A whole lot of yellow. Hold on to that. Yeah. So, okay. We're still looking at movement up north. Moves the area up north from 6 over to Anderson Street, Texas, over to Anderson Street from George Bush, not to 2818, but down to Southwest Parkway in this particular scenario. Again, increasing our low SES students at College Station High School. It does move the boundary on the western end south and east to IGN, and Copy Bridge. It mirrors 2B to a degree, but continues south. So again, for your bearings, it's Creekview and Cypress Grove. So this would move the boundary south to include Dove Crossing, Bridal Gate, Springbrook, eastern part of Shenandoah, Spring Creek development, that's the development out just north of the Tower Point area. Southern Oaks down in this area, and it would also capture the area between Arrington Road and Greens Prairie Road. And this is site of future development.
Margraves.
Correct. A lot to kind of take in. I'll give everybody a second to look at that, and then we'll look at the numbers that go with it. Okay. Utilize current students with this boundary. This is what our count would look like. Here's our free and reduced lunch percentage, 31.8, 25.4, difference of 6.4. Look at our enrollment projection. Beginning fall of 2019, Consol at 2007, College Station High School at 1938. And again, just as the previous examples, you can see how that projects out in the out years. 2485 and 2678. Still running consistent with where we need to be looking for a bond for the addition of College Station High School at fall of 21. On the ground and ready to use in 3 years, fall of 24. High School 3, fall of 25. So that stays fairly consistent throughout all the options. Observations, comparability to 6.4%. This does not move an existing growth neighborhood in the southern part of the district to Consol. It does add a large future projected development in the southern part of the district to Consol. That is the area that we mentioned between Arrington and Greens Prairie. Moves more densely populated existing neighborhoods to Consol, Flats, the Dove Crossing, and those areas that we mentioned in the middle part of the district. Does reduce current walkability in the neighborhoods around CSHS, because now you're looking at placing those particular neighborhoods at Consol as multifamily dwellings from northern part of the district, CSHS. That's fairly consistent with the other options, except it only runs down the Southwest Parkway as opposed to 2818. What your middle school splits look like: AMCMS, 81% Consol, 19 to CSHS. CSMS, 59% to Consol, 41% to CSHS. And Weber Middle School, 19 to 81. As I kind of mentioned earlier, that all our information from this evening will be placed on the CSISD site. High School Boundary Adjustment 2018 at the top of the news and announcements section. And of course, the workshop and our public forums will be video recorded and posted as well. Just for our public and our audience, public forum is scheduled for Monday, April 2nd at 5:30, again here in our boardroom. Our next workshop to continue looking at this information is a week from today, April the 4th at 3 o'clock. And then the third that is scheduled at this point in time, Monday, April the 9th at 5 p.m. And of course, the public can send feedback at any time to feedback@csisd.org. Excuse me. And that goes to the board members. And questions?
Okay, thank you. Well, the process is going to be a little bit different this time. I've likened it to making sausage, and we're going to be doing it in public this time instead of the bulk of the work being done by a committee. So it's going to be different. One of the things I ask is keep your eye on the process and the procedure we're using. I mean, it's brand new for us. So if you see things along the way that you think can be improved, or we ought to talk about doing it in a different way, that we can change the process for the future use, I think that'd be very helpful, because this is something where we're learning as we go a little bit in terms of the process. I think it's clear that this is a lot to digest and that you will have questions. I think it's clearly appropriate tonight, ask them if you have them. But also, I think emails like we've done in the past would be good. Help me understand how we shared information in the past. I think if you did another option and sent it out to us, you would also put that on the internet. Is that right?
When we got to board meetings and you guys asked us to go back and look at something, we would come back to a subsequent board meeting. We would share that with it, and we would put it online as well. So at the high school boundary adjustment tab that Mike just talked about, we already have space in there for every one of our scheduled workshops. And so we will be populating tonight's up there with the information, as we said, the video, this presentation that Mr. Martindale gave, as well as all four options, including maps, actually some better maps where you can drill down and see street names, where you can actually drill down and see a lot more street names. So that will be better than what you saw here tonight for the purposes of our presentation. And we'll have those with the tables that you saw for all four options. That's what's going to be on there for tonight's meeting. And then we'll have other information from our other meetings that, for example, if you tell us to go back and make some changes to option one, then we'll have that stuff online as well for everybody in the public to see.
Okay, good. So in essence, the public can know that they're going to see what we see.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, who's first with questions? And not to put you on the spot. I mean, again, the purpose of tonight is to start, and don't feel like you have to have a bunch of questions. But if you do, feel free.
Can we have the information in front of us now? Like the, oh, okay, because I like paper. Well, I like paper, so I can go back and forth. When you look at those numbers on the splits for the middle schools, does that include comparability? Like you all, I'm certain that some of the comparability is part of that comparability in those middle school numbers as well.
Those middle school splits are just the number of kids going from 8th grade into 9th grade, or from middle school into the high school from those particular zones. The comparability numbers as far as percent low SES are actually the numbers that we shared earlier. We don't have a comparability. We don't have percentages of percentages, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
I mean, feasibly, the middle school zones are not changing, so their comparability numbers would not change
would
during
stay the
any
same.
of
It's
this.
just where
They're
they go to
automatically going to
school,
stay the
right?
same because they're all going to be the same kids no matter what. It's just where they go to high school.
right. One thing that might be helpful, I think in the past, some of the, it's basically an overlay of the high school zoning with the middle school zoning so we can see where the split actually is on the map. And that might help you, I know, with some of the issues that you were concerned about previously, if I remember correctly. It's been 2 years now. But that might be helpful so we can kind of see on the map where those splits are. I mean, obviously I can eyeball it, but
One thing I would like to see is on each one of those options. And so I think you kind of, you laid out different sections and gave me some numbers, but how much are in those sections that are moving for each one of those options? So for instance, for option 3, when you look at the map, how many are in that blue portion, the north blue portion, and how many kids are in that west blue portion that are moving? And that northern section is not as long as it was, maybe a little wider, but not as skinnier. But just at the end of the day, how many kids we're talking about in each one of those deals. Now, I think in the long run, it might make it easier if we're going to end up coming up with different variations of these options. It'll give us a ballpark of, well, how many kids are we really talking in each one of these groups, right, as we process through that.
So question for clarification, and this one's a good one right here. So, for example, this particular area right here, which is the Margraves Ranch, the number of kids moving is 0.
Right.
Nobody lives there.
Right.
The number of kids moving in 5 years from now could be significant.
Yes.
So are you wanting 2019 numbers? Or are you wanting?
No. I'm talking about initial numbers in that whole blue section. I mean, I think we all understand that
You're saying
that's
there's
an empty number of things.
There's X number of students that we're looking at today that live there, that reside there in 7th through 10th
That's
grade.
correct. Understanding that that's potentially a high growth. We've got a whole lot of potential high growth areas in this city, some of which have been potential high growth for 15 years. But just an idea of how many
So
are in each
one number.
of those.
Thank you. That's what I wanted.
Absolutely.
well, recognizing it's 0 now, what number are we using in 5 years to, well, make our projections about the
We can-
need
we
for
can
a
get that
bond?
for you.
Okay.
But I think what you're asking, it's how many kids are actually moving. And yeah, and in 5 years, there may be 500 kids there, but none of them are moving from one school to another.
We're talking about implementation in 2019. Gotcha.
What else?
I have no doubt that there will be a lot more questions that come up. I'm having a hard time, to be honest, with this not all sitting in front of me to come up with a rational, what about this, what about that kind of questions. It's a lot of detail. I guess I'd commend you guys on coming up with 4 pretty different options that all accomplish the same objectives, right? I mean, so, I mean, if nothing else, we get a sense of how different alternatives can actually look like. And there's some options up here that I know that I had, at least in the back of my mind, not really considered in terms of all of that. You know, I do, when we talk about walkability, how far away is it before we start extending buses for kids?
2 miles.
2 miles.
Unless there is a hazardous route. So if we're crossing a large street, a freeway, then we will provide bus services in less than 2 miles if they have to cross a hazardous street.
Okay. I guess it'd be worthwhile knowing, and I think I can figure this out when we get the detailed maps, you know, exactly how far away those kids in that, and this could apply to any one of the options, but how far those kids in that new blue section right there are actually from College Station
front
High
door.
School, right? I mean, it's hard to tell on a map like this and say they're whatever, but I mean, you know, it'll be interesting what kind of feedback I guess we get from the public, but the notion of taking a kid that can walk to high school and not have them walk to high school anymore is, and maybe that's not happening. Maybe those kids would have not been walking no matter what. So, I mean, I'll figure it out, but it's just a thought process in terms of a map that is not quite as detailed as.
Right. And
Some of this I'd want to, I'll try to drive around.
Yeah, I was
too.
gonna say, we
That's
can,
really the way to do
once
it.
you get that detailed map, hone in, see exactly where it is, go drive out there, look at it. I'll go with you.
I don't trust you
That's
driving. Yeah. But yeah, no, we'll have to do some driving. So
Is there any way from the transportation standpoint that you know, like if, I mean, there's a part of me that goes, if there's no kids walking, then it's kind of a moot point. But if you had some number to say that there were, you know, on an average, this many high schools riding or walking, or I don't know if we can tell. Is there any way?
transportation wouldn't know how many kids are walking.
That's correct.
So
I said that wrong, so thank you.
but they would, if these kids right here were going to Consol, we would know how many high school kids reside there and how many are eligible to ride the bus, and then therefore how many are riding the bus. But since they are eligible to walk to College Station High School, we don't really have a number. All we can say is, you know, there's however many high school students living there. So, and you can kind of walk, you can kind of watch around 8 o'clock and see, you can certainly see people walking down Victoria that direction. So.
Okay, what about information about which families, because the same kids will not be affected by moving 2 years ago and again, but can you show us which areas were affected both rezones? Does that make sense? So if they were affected, I want to know, say Edelweiss, I'm just throwing this out for an example. Say Edelweiss was moved in the last zone. They were zoned for CSHS, and then they got zoned to Consol, and now they're being zoned again. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember how that all happened. But do you see what I'm saying?
I do. So you would like just
Which
to
areas
know
were affected both times?
for each of the 4 options.
but feasibly, there's nobody we're switching back,
Right.
right? I mean, because that would not have changed in that direction. I mean,
Right.
we're keeping in mind that everything obviously in the lower College Station
Right.
zone are
Just
all
wanna make
moving in one
sure.
direction, and that would not have nobody would have gotten switched to.
Right. I mean,
Well,
that's
maybe
what,
though. I have
that's
to go
what I'm
back and look.
hoping,
Yep.
but I
see
just
what- I
want
see
to
what
make
you're saying.
sure.
Okay. Okay, we can look at that. This is a lot to digest, and both for the members of the board and for the members of the community. That's why we wanted to kind of take the time, and I appreciate Mr. Martindale and his work in putting this presentation together in a way that I think that makes sense, that captures our thought process as we develop these various options. So we wanted to take the time to lay it out for the board and for the community, and allow both groups to be thinking about it, and then have the community come back on Monday when we have our public forum to provide us feedback on the various options and what they see as the benefits and detriments of the various options that we have brought forward, and then be able to take not only your thoughts and questions and the feedback that you get both in person and online from the community, and then, okay, we're really rolling up our sleeves on Wednesday the 4th, saying, okay, and then start hitting us with options or things that you would like for us to consider moving forward, and bringing back some of those to you in subsequent meetings.
Thank you. Do we have anything else tonight? I mean, I can tell you, I'm looking forward to the public feedback, and then what I'm going to do is what you described: sit down with them side by side, and probably a calculator, and start trying to compare and contrast, and then we'll be ready to go. And again, don't hesitate to, if you think of a thought and information you need, send it to them.
I guess, you take these growth areas and, they're played out in those projection numbers as you move forward. I think coming in here, I was concerned based on the conversations we'd had earlier that, 200 and a total move of 250 students was not going to be enough to level out the population in one and bring enough to Consol to be able to push off that bond as far as we would really like to be able to push it off. And I'll just have to take a look. I'll just have to take a look at those numbers, but it seemed pretty even on an outward going scale. So if you go back, go back to the
other one?
You pick any option and just go to the spreadsheet that shows projections out for students, right? I mean, those are pretty tight as you move out. And the good thing about all these options, I think, is that they all add some growth areas for Consol that they don't currently have, that we expect to see some students, right? I mean, I think I can speak for most of the people on the board. Is what we do not want is to put future boards in a position where they're going to have to do this again before a third high school, ideally, right? So I wouldn't want to take so few kids that at the end of the day, 3 years from now, we're having to come back and say, we got to move more during that process. But each one of these, I have to sit down and take a really close look at them. At least it seems like it balances out those options in a pretty unique way. So
I wanted to say this. Mr. Martindale talked about at the beginning of the presentation that our district is made up of more than 350 planning units. So if you look at these two planning units right here, it's hard to see because they're grayed out, but this is Meadow Creek. It's packaged packaged sewer neighborhood on Copy Bridge Road, west of the railroad tracks. That has all houses in it, has a bunch of kids in there. That area is not going to grow. Okay, we know that. And so there's not a lot of growth projected for that area. But when you get into these collection down here, this is Saddle Creek. And so there are still adding houses in there. And so each one of these polygons in here, to be technically, they're not all boxes, have growth or not growth associated with them. And what the program does is aggregate them all together. And so we do So, so just moving a polygon, just moving an area from one to the other could have big impact at the beginning and not so much at the end, could have negligible impact at the beginning and much more at the end, depending on the growth projected in that particular area. And so taking all of these together in these various scenarios has gotten what you've seen in the tables that we presented on the forecast.
Any more?
I mean, I'm good for now. I don't know what else I would ask at the moment. It's really what it boils down to,
Okay.
Yep.
It's not your last opportunity,
as it turns out.
as it turns out. All right. All right, then we're adjourned.